welcome to the Improv Summit. As you can see behind me, I'm your host, as always, Spencer. With me today, I have a very special guest with me. I say that all the time, but of course, I always mean it every time. And with me today, I have none other than the wonderful Zach Huddleston. How's it going, Zach?
Good, Spencer. I mean, it's one thing to say very special guest every time. It's another thing to then acknowledge that you say it every time. It really sucks the wind out of the very special guest, but I'll accept it nonetheless. I'm a sucker for positive feedback, so I'm
But
doing
you
good.
are a very special guest. You are a VSG, and that's the first time I've said that on this
Okay.
podcast, improv, YouTube show, whatever this is. You are my first VSG, my first very special guest with an acronym. So
Okay. All
I guess
right.
it's an acronym. Yeah, acronym. Yeah, yeah, acronym. Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's dive into your improv background because everyone knows all about me and they know I like to talk for reasons that I don't know. But your improv background, tell me whatever you want, whatever that means to you, whatever speaks to you about your improv background.
Okay. I started doing improv um, roughly 20 years ago at the University of Florida when I was in college. That was part of a thriving improv scene in Gainesville, Florida, built around the club Theater Strike Force. This has many prominent alumni, including Saturday Night Live alumni or writers and famous directors and all kinds of stuff like that. And then me, who's much less accomplished and famous. But then I moved to Los Angeles, where I studied at the iOS Theater and the UCB Theater and kind of really fell into the community, especially at the iOS Theater, where I eventually became an instructor and then became an artistic director and eventually a general manager. And I have the distinction of being the person who closed iOS when we shuttered. I had the last set of keys and I closed that place. And then I've been lucky enough since then, pre-pandemic especially, to kind of find a home at the West Side Comedy Theater in Santa Monica, where I'm now an instructor and a performer and love it there. And I've kind of bounced around other places, performing, teaching when they'll let me, watching shows, and generally being an improv geek.
Great. I love it. I love it. I was there the night iOS closed. Um, Bumped into Charna. Somehow that happened. I had never met her until closing night, so that was what a treat. What a treat.
Yeah, it was an
Uh,
intense final week and final night. Yeah.
yeah. Cool. So yeah, so great. So one of the big things that I always like to know, because improv feels like a lot of times actors or performers are like, I have to take improv because my manager told me to, my agent told me to. But a lot of times I've discovered in classes, I actually am working with improvisers who have no aspirations of being a performer or people who are just doing it because they love it. So for you, what drew you to improv? Like, what drew you to improv and what kept you doing improv?
The thing that drew me, I actually started doing stand-up in my late teens, and I think I was just a attention seeking, thinking I was funny and smart and had something to say kind of a person. But I kind of fell into a community there, and a lot of the people that were doing stand up where I started were also doing improv, and so I was like, oh great, more stage time. So it was kind of a natural extension. And then I think the thing that kept me going initially was I had some relative success. You know, you get a couple laughs and that's very addictive. There's a dopamine hit of making people laugh on stage, and you want that more, and you want more attention and adulation and whatever. And then the thing that then kind of takes over after maybe that is no longer as powerful is the community and the people and the friends you make. And certainly in my experience, there's been no better way to meet funny, smart,
Mhm.
kind, creative people than in improv. And again, that's probably because that's just where I've spent all my time. I'm sure there's other communities that are as vibrant, but for me, that was sort of everybody I know that is cool and funny and smart is an improviser, right? And that was
Yeah.
very addictive. And it becomes this kind of self-reinforcing thing where like you start improv, you make friends, all your friends do improv, so you do more improv, then you make more friends, and blah, blah, blah. Before you know it, you're only dating improvisers and working with improvisers and collaborating with improvisers. And, you know, you build out a sphere of people that way. And that certainly was my experience. And then eventually you get employed to some degree as an improviser or a teacher or something related. And then that only reinforces things more until your entire life is somehow tangentially connected to comedy or live performance or improv or something. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's so iOS was the first time I had real like professional improv experience, and I took musical improv before I took the Improv 101. And it was interesting because I literally was like, oh, I have a degree in music. I'm sure like I can figure out the improv, like making stuff up. I was so intimidated. I didn't realize like how scary it was at first, especially musical improv. But then I realized that with continuing to do it, I loved it because it allowed me to like train my brain to like not panic when improv happened or to like realize that like I could do it. So I think it is this idea of, finding things that you like about improv and continuing with those concepts and those ideas, which leads me into my segue. And I've been doing this now as my segue because that's how my segues work. Um, do you have any like go-to games as a teacher, as a coach, as a a performer that you
I do like to
uh,
perform more
yeah, don't we
rather
all?
than perform less. Yeah.
Great, you did the pun. Usually I try to do at least one pun in the show, and now it's accomplished by my guest this time. So that's great. I have nothing to say. The show's over. Thank you so much for joining. No, I don't know how that like happened. I just like kind of had a lapse in like moment. I don't know. Anyways, as a performer, as a coach, as a teacher, are there any go-to games that you like to use as warm-ups, or like if you're doing short form games, are there any games that you like playing over and over?
The longer I taught, and I was lucky enough to be able to teach for a while at a couple different places and kind of different formats of class and things like that. I've been very lucky because teaching has been such a wonderful experience and I've loved it. But the longer I teach, the more I kind of restrict the number of warm-ups, and really I've refined it, and I'm open to suggestion and learning, and I'm sure in a few years I'll have a totally different perspective. But like for my money, there is one improv warm-up that is the king of all improv warm-ups and reigns supreme, and that is, and I always preface it with, it's the improv warm-up people make fun of when they make fun of improv warm-ups. Which, what does that preface lead you to think, Spencer?
I would say zip zap zop.
Zip zap zop, absolutely. But the reason I keep coming back to it is I've had the absolute best experiences with zip zap zop in the way that I like to facilitate it, and other people do. I'm sure, I can't even remember who I stole this from, but I stole it from somebody and I've become obsessed with it. I do zip zap zop not as like some kind of like elimination exercise or the right and wrong or whatever. I do it, I like kind of combine it with a mirroring exercise. And it doesn't matter what the zip, the zap of the zop is, as long as you receive and send on exactly whatever that last person gave you, right? This kind of mirroring thing. And I mean, I coach the hell out of it. Like by the end of an 8-week course with me, you will have done zip zap zop 8 times. And usually like people kind of giggle and think it's kind of silly week 1. Week 2 and 3, they're like, are we really gonna have to do this every week? And then by week 7, they're like, I can't wait for zip zap zop, because we take it like that kind of serious. Because I really think it's like that great quote, and I first heard it attributed to Stephen Colbert, and I'm sure he got it from somebody else, but like, that the entire flavor of the ocean is in one drop of seawater or whatever. I think that's zip zap zop. This one goofy improv exercise warm up, right, that they teach like 5-year-olds and has been done in every terrible improv class ever, has everything about improv built into it, and that's why I love it. Right, like listening, nonverbal communication, agreement, right, like commitment, everything is in there if you take it seriously. And I like that because like as much as I learned the value, I used to not value warm-ups at all. I was like, let's cut out this crap, but just get to the good scene stuff. That's what we're all here for, right? And then I started realizing like, oh no, actually, warm-ups have an incredibly important place of like switching from your outside brain to your improv brain, and like kind of getting people in the proper froth to do make-em-ups is critical.
Mm.
And so then for that, I was like, oh, this is the best one. I'll stand by that.
Well,
I'll put it toe to toe with anybody else's improv warm-up.
great. I was gonna say I'm glad that you love Zip Zap Zop because that makes one of us. That being said,
But you've never
uh,
done Zip Zap Zop with me, have you, Spencer? Probably not.
I think I
I
have
could
actually. I think you subbed our class like once, but it was early on, so it was like week 1 or 2, so it was like not as
again.
exciting. But
It's only after 8 weeks that you can truly appreciate it.
I'll
You
tell
know what I
you, I
mean?
did it once at Second City where it was like zip zap zop, and then after that it became like we said our names and passed it, and then it became someone else. We said someone else's name and then passed it, and then we did like street names and then passed it, and then colors, and then it became we could do whatever we wanted, but we had to do at least three of each one before we shifted, and that was pretty fun. But I was gonna say, like I'm a big fan of like sound and motion or whatever, but like zip zap zop, sound and motion, these kind of games. What I love about them, as you're saying, is dropping everything at the door, like literally leaving your baggage at the door, coming in and doing a game that doesn't require really much thinking at all. It's just a way to like loosen up, get the body flowing, and just like laughing. Like, if you go zip zoop zap, like whatever you do, haha, oh man, we're having so much fun. Like it's such a refreshing moment, because when you start getting into scenes, I know that sometimes I get too in my head with scenes because I'm like, I want to make the right response. I want to give it the right initiation, this idea of quote unquote being right in improv. But I think that these games are great because they're just like goofy, silly, and they're in a way not specific to improv, but are so heavily specific to improv. And that's what I love, is it's not like I'm doing a scene that I'm making up, which is what improv is. This is taking the improv skills from my tool belt and putting it into something that it's like, let me just do whatever I want, have fun. And so I think that that's with Zip Zap Zop. I also, as someone with partial blindness, we did a competition version once. I have a hard time watching the Zip Zap Zop go because I'm looking with one eye. But I won that competition. I don't know how I ended up winning, but I won.
Clearly had an
So
impact on you, if you still remember that, Spencer.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I think that was that might have been the level one at Second City where we played that game like every week, and like that was like our warm up. But yeah, I think the idea of, and maybe I just like, maybe it's like when it's fun because I remember when we were like throwing in like song lyrics, and we had to do like song lyrics that we were passing. That was like pretty fun because I like music. So maybe like reevaluating it in terms of the fun scale, right? Like when it is flipped on its head, like you're saying that you do, like as the weeks progress and stuff, that it tends to be more fun than just like zip zap zop zip zap zop. But if it's like
And again,
going
I
through it
think,
all.
you could, to me, the more I teach, the more I realize, like, the more it's the intention with which you approach anything
Yeah.
that makes it good or effective or ineffective, right? And like, I think I could get people to get something out of tic-tac-toe, right, were I to approach it properly, give the right kind of feedback. Some of the, again, in hindsight, and like, I took a million improv classes, and then afterwards I started teaching, and you learn so much more about the classes you took after you yourself attempt to teach. And I gained so much respect for many of my teachers, and then I lost respect for a couple of teachers, or at least, again, the tiny minority. But like, I had some instructors that treated like warm-ups as like, okay, yeah, you guys warm up while I get my notes together or
Yeah.
whatever, right? And it was a like a requirement, a necessary evil or something like that. And for me, again, because I'm an improv junkie who loves this stuff, cares too much about it, thinks too much about it, I'm like, I don't want to waste 8 seconds of a 3-hour class, right?
Mm.
Not to say that like everything has to be intense and hardcore or whatever. And like, certainly I try to bring a fun element and a spontaneity and an enjoyable element to class. But I'm like, why waste these 11 minutes of warm-ups, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you guys do whatever warm-up you want, okay, now, after that, now then I begin my instruction. Like, I want to get a lesson out of the way we introduce ourselves. I
Yeah.
want to get a lesson out of everything, because why not? Why not have 3 hours of
Yeah,
value rather than 2 hours and 15 minutes or
for
whatever it is?
sure.
It's
I
also
think
why I
that,
hate breaks. I would rather not take a break in the middle of class, but God damn it, these people's bladders, they necessitate
you
it.
know, I necessitate a bladder break like every like 10 minutes, but I push through to the break. Yeah, I got a little baby bladder. And then it's like also like I dehydrate myself because I'm like if I drink water, it'll maximize my it'll not maximize, it'll make it faster when I have to go, whatever that word is, when I have to go to use the bathroom. So I'm just like I'm just not gonna drink any water. And then the second I do, I'm like, now I know I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom. And of course, I train myself to think that that's the case, you know. But anyway, I could talk about that all day. Let's move on, shall we?
That's a
Enough about my
separate,
bladder.
that's the urination summit. That's your alternate
Ah, yeah,
show, right? You put
yeah.
those out
The
on,
your the your improv summit,
yeah,
the
yeah.
hyphen, where every 5 minutes I'm like, okay, we'll be right back in five.
It's the
Yeah, right.
improv toilet, I think, is maybe a new title you should consider for
Ooh,
that show. Yeah.
yeah, I
That's where
like
actually where
that.
I've performed most of my work, was in the improv toilet.
Improv toilet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I get my best ideas in the improv toilet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
And
I let
then,
them go because with improv, the biggest thing with a lot of warm-ups is, you come in and you're like, I got the funniest idea for a scene. It's gonna be the funniest. I got this funniest joke. It's gonna be the funny joke. And it's like, just get it out in warm-ups. It's not gonna be funny. Like, get it out. You're gonna try and push it in a scene. Get it out in warm-ups where it doesn't matter
well,
as far
and
as that
honestly,
moment.
honestly, I'm going to make this entire interview about Zip Zap Zop, Spencer, whether you like it or not. But
Great.
like, honestly, that's one of the reasons I keep coming back to that as a warm up, is because I think, again, the way that I like to play it, it reveals a lot about the different improvisers, and everybody has their hangups. Everybody has their issues, the things they're trying to overcome or improve upon or whatever. And like, it becomes very apparent really quickly who is desperately trying to be funny, right?
Mm.
Because like they receive like zip, and then they turn it into, Dracula voice Zop or something like that,
Yeah.
because in
Oh
their
yeah.
brain they're like, I need to be creative, I need to change this. And that's always when I step in and I stop it, and I was like, what did you receive? You receive zip, and you turn it into zop or whatever. Like, what were the instructions for this game? Just send on what you receive. And that usually like ruffles somebody's feathers, and they're like, okay, well, I showed up here to be hilarious, but fine, I'll do your lame warm up. And then we go back to it. And like, that's an important moment for that person with that mindset. And I was that person with that mindset. I showed up to my improv classes trying to prove I was funny and deserved to be there and all this kind of stuff.
Don't we
But it's,
all?
yeah, well, actually, I don't think not everybody does. I think
That's
there are
true.
different kind of groups that come for different reasons. But I think that particular type of person, there are lots of them. Again, I include myself in that group. And like, it's an important lesson for them to learn that like, improv is not about like what can come out of here, right?
Mm.
It's more about like how much you can take in from here, right? And the more you can get from your scene partners, your teammates, your classmates, not like, okay, yeah, all this is fun, but let me put out this thing I thought of on the bus over here, right? Like, that is not improv. That doesn't lead to good work, and that stagnates your growth potential. And so like, that's always an important moment. And it's usually tough because usually half the time, Dracula voice might be the funniest person in class, right? And it'd be very easy for them to kind of skate along with whatever skill or knowledge base they showed up to week one and get all the way through and kind of finish 8 weeks being exactly the same place they were when they started, which is fine. They were already above average, they'll end above average, whatever. But I feel like I'm a failure as a teacher if I don't attempt to make that person better, or at least like help them see that there are other things they can be doing or learning, right? And so like,
Yeah.
it's important. No Dracula voice. Unless you receive Dracula voice, you don't send on Dracula voice. And that's like an important lesson throughout improv, right? For scene work.
Yeah, I love that. And it also made me think of that moment of like that passing the energy that you received makes me think of like a lot of games, but one in particular that I was taught was Drunk Dinosaur, where basically someone says something. It's like, maybe they'll go, "Hey, how's it going?" Right? You can't really see my hands because of the background, but then the next person's supposed to do the exact same thing and pass it. So it becomes like, "Hey, how you doing?" But then someone will forget it and they might go like, "Wait, can you what? Hey, how's it going?" And then the next person wants to always just go, "Hey, how's it going?" But really they need to go, wait, what? Sorry. Hey, how's it going? And you add all those things in there. Or like if someone goes, then the next person is, because you're supposed to literally hone in and focus on every aspect from the second that person from that second that the person before them finishes, that moment that they start, everything before they start, that moment they start until they are completely done. And you can tell when people are like, I just want to get it, I just want to do it, versus people are like, okay, I'm staring, I'm watching every single move that you make. I saw that you like scratched your head right before you did it, so I'm going to scratch my head before I do it. And I think that's again with zip zap zop. That's a way with that energy is like you're saying, like whatever energy you get. Sometimes it's like zip zap zop. It gets faster, it gets more intense, but the energy is relatively similar because you're passing the same energy from person to person. It's not like you said zip and then zap zombie and then like zop is like zap. Like it's not like unless that's the goal of the game. It's like just change the sound every time. Pass it and give a different character sound, right? Like a character zip zap zop. So maybe I'll reevaluate my opinion on zip zap zop throughout this conversation.
I'm telling you, it'll blow your mind. And again, yeah, I think like what you were just saying about like you could again the way you administer it could be to like make a new choice with every zip or whatever. That's also fine. I find in my especially recent teaching experience that often the skill that people need to turn on the most when they walk into a classroom is being able to leave self and
Mm,
focus on scene partner, right? Because like especially like week one, right? Can you imagine? And I think about this all the time because like if I ever go to a new experience, be that like first time I go, and I know none of this has happened during quarantine, but the first time I go to a restaurant or a club meeting or somebody's house, right? There is an inherent human self-consciousness, fear, right? Like, where's the bathroom? How do I have to take my shoes off now? Like, do I say hello to these people? All these kind of questions are in people's heads when they first walk into an improv class, even if it's 501 grad level, whatever the hell, right? Um,
mm-hmm.
and so I think like it's the most important thing at the beginning of a class to be able to ease that internal pressure, right? Hit the little exhaust valve and allow people to like leave self and focus on other, right? Don't worry about how awkward or weird or whatever you might be. Your only task right now for these 2.5 minutes is to focus on how that other person wiggled their fingers when they sent you a zop, right? Like that's such a freeing experience to be able to not worry about being smart or funny or correct, right? And instead just think about, you know, taking in all of their finger wiggle and high pitched voice and sending that on to the next person. And I think it lets us tap into the thing that improv can do as well or better than almost all other performing arts. And that's like collective creativity, right?
Mm.
Again, it's not like if you just have the best, funniest ideas, that's awesome for you. Go do stand-up or storytelling or write a play or shoot a short film or whatever, right? Like that's probably
Right.
a better venue for your great internal ideas. The beauty of this art form is that we do this thing collectively, right? We come up with these ideas between the 2 or 10 of us.
Mm.
And I think that that's like, we have to constantly be reminded of that every time we step into a classroom or walk on stage or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's great. And also, I'm gonna ask this question, which is gonna lead into my question. I'm getting better at these segues. That's the idea of like, but
You
what
didn't
if I'm
even do
not?
the hands, Spencer. You didn't even do the
Well,
hands.
I don't have to do it for every single one, but
Oh, okay.
but I've
No.
started to figure out. I've never been on a Segway, but it feels like it would be something like this. I guess you can go
That's a
backwards
high
with it.
handle in that segue. That's like, or maybe you're a short person. I don't know. I feel like they're, but I too have never been on a segue, so I'm totally
Oh, I guess it.
speculating.
Yeah, I'm thinking like I keep bringing up Paul Blart because that's my experience with Segways. I guess as Paul Blart,
Yes.
Mall Cop, and I
You a
guess it
big
is.
Kevin James aficionado, Spencer?
Big, I don't know. My dad loves Kevin James. We saw Zookeeper in theaters. We sure did.
Nice.
Um,
So really, you're second gen James. Really,
I'm
I
I'm
mean,
second
you're
gen. Yeah,
runs in the family.
Kev, you believe it? Yeah, I tried. Anyway, um, but there's gonna be people who are gonna say like, but what if I'm not creative? I'm not an actor. I'm not fun. Improv, like I've said before, is something that can be for anyone, not necessarily just performers. So if you have those people who are like not actors or not improvisers, not performers, not comedians, what are some skills that you feel or elements of improv that people can use in everyday life, whether it's IT, in the restaurant industry, as a producer, as someone who, works at a theme park, whatever it is, how can people use improv in their daily life?
I mean, there's so much, and clearly there's been 10,000 corporate improv classes that have focused on this exact topic. I think for me, treating listening as a skill that can be improved, right? Like playing the violin or table tennis or whatever, right? Is an incredibly important lesson. And that it's something that has to be practiced. And there are technique and there is theory and all this kind of stuff behind just listening. Because man, that it changes your experience in any interaction, whether that's sitting next to somebody on an airplane or talking to your boss or engaging with an in-law or whatever it is. Understanding listening and what it really means, like being present. And I think like that kind of overlaps with a lot of like meditation and yoga and a lot of new agey Buddhist theory and stuff like that about being present in the moment. I think, man, that is so important because like when you watch a great improviser, they're so present, and that is like their great gift. And I think that's something that like when you cross over into other walks of your life, is still an incredible, great gift, and it like makes you love people when they're great listeners. Makes people more charismatic and likable and all this kind of stuff that is good. That's good stuff to have in life.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think this idea of listening, what I've noticed is I have become a better listener, I think, because of improv, but I think it's also not necessarily just listening specifically, but I feel like improvisers have a heightened sense of listening where they're good listeners, but they're in like it's like an intentional, active listening that exceeds a general like I'm listening, I'm present, but like even more so like you have to be present and being able to identify what is the best next step for the scenario or whatever. And I think that that goes back to like general conversation. We improvise every day in our life. And if someone's talking to you and you're just like, like, let me just, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, by the way, here's the thing I wanted to say. Then you're not present, you're not listening. And, I could also be listening. Yeah, okay, you're talking about, yeah, oh, yeah, the Beatles. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, you could be, I don't know why I brought up the Beatles, but you could be talking about anything and people can listen, selective hearing. But with improvisers, like you said, this idea of being present, it's like completely heightened in an improv scene and in regular life because improvisers are so expected to listen so intently that they start to pick up on that for whatever they're doing. So I think that that's great.
Yeah. I'm surprised you mentioned the Beatles and not the Blartles, which was the spin-off musical
Ah,
group from Paul Blart. That was him and all his other mall cops had like a doo-wop quartet.
yeah, Paul Blart Cartney.
That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The
Yeah.
long name.
Yes. Lucy in the Sky with Kay's Jewelers, I think was their
Yeah,
big hit.
yeah, that
Um,
was great.
yeah.
Yellow school bus, yellow school bus too. The
Yes.
yellow school bus Marine.
Yes. Yeah. Um, let's turn the next. Can we just do 15 minutes on Paul Blart Beatles songs?
Yeah, that was
Um,
actually the next question. It was actually, could you do 15 minutes of Paul Blart puns for me?
Absolutely. Actually, if
Great.
everybody can subscribe to my podcast, which is Blart Puns, a lot of great segue bits, a couple Orange Julius references that really kill. Um, yeah,
Is
but
there is
circling
there a
back,
Dairy Queen and a Burger King also?
that's right. Yeah, yeah. And, Bang Bang Maxwell, Silver Hammer Pants. I don't know. Okay, that one
Great.
I
I that
lost.
no,
We'll
I
workshop.
was following it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I got it.
Um, in my life, I shopped them all. Okay. Um,
Great.
yeah. Circling back to listening, though, I think that it's such an incredibly important skill. And again, it's like chess or something like that. Like you never master it, you're constantly working on it, and your skills
Mm.
can fade and sharpen in equal measure. I'm sure the pandemic has rotted that portion of our medulla oblongata or whatever for most people, right? As we've
The
had so many
MO,
fewer. Yes,
the
uh,
MO of pandemic was to ruin the MO.
that's right. Yes,
Ooh.
yeah. Uh, because so many fewer, like even my fiance and I have had a few like masked recent kind of social interactions, and like we're always remarking to ourselves like we've forgotten how to talk to people,
Mm.
like it you that can totally atrophy. And I think it's like you feel the same thing when you haven't been on stage in a long time or haven't improvised in a long time, and you get back and you're like, this is incredibly difficult and I feel self-conscious and it's clunky and hard and sweaty in ways that it didn't used to be. And I think like that's beautiful in a way, knowing that like this is a skill you never master and you always work on is freeing to me. Like I think if you can approach improv as like a lifetime study as opposed to a skill that like you eventually graduate from, or like now I'm an improviser, I know how to improv, you know I'm
Mm.
good now or whatever. It's like no, that everybody has their own like kind of unique journey and their own kind of skills that are always waxing and waning and shifting and prioritizing and things like that. Like that's beautiful to me. That means like, oh great, you get to always be a student, which is freeing, especially when you shit the bed on stage. You're allowed to say,
Literally.
yeah, we're allowed to say bed on your podcast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um Especially when you shit the bed on stage after 15 years of performing. It's freeing to be like, well, that's part of my lifetime journey,
Mm. Yeah.
should I be still failing wildly after doing it this long? Who's to say? Probably,
Yeah.
hopefully not that frequently, but it'll happen. And that's part of that's part of the
Yeah.
journey.
And I'm glad you brought up the failure, right? Because this idea of like we don't want to fail, right? And I've said this before on this show, but the idea of being like be okay with failing in improv changed my mindset completely, because before I was like, I don't want to make a wrong move, whatever that is, quote unquote. But then like the first time I remember I think I was in an IO class and we were doing a scene, and I was so in my head about getting it right that I literally stopped the scene and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. And the teacher was like, don't stop, keep going. And I was like, I was so in my head about it. But I think in those moments when I actually did fail in improv, literally I went, oh, okay, no one even remembers what I just did. I don't remember what it was either. Like the world didn't stop. It kept going. And like it was fine. And so I think that it's great that you bring up, you said failure, and I think that that's one thing, but also, like there's so many ways of learning improv where, sometimes, you get sick of classes. Like classes at some point you're just like, I can't do any more classes right now. But doing reps, being on teams, even like what's interesting is like if you don't feel like you want to take a class in improv, you can do reps. But even like reading up on different subjects makes you more well-rounded to be able to throw it into your improv. Like the expert, like one person's an expert in the scene and the other person may not know exactly what it is. I will never forget the time it was in 5B at IO where the person was literally like, "Oh yeah, I've got the sativa, I've got this and all this," and I was like, "Wait, you have different kinds of sugar for the tea?" And I had no idea what sativa was. But the whole thing was he was an expert in weed, and it became my character just misinterpreting everything as like hearing something else, because stevia and sativa are very similar as far as the sounds. And so that's always funny too. It's like I didn't fail in that moment. In fact, I made a character that the audience really loved because he didn't know what was going on. And that was fun for them. And so I think that that's this creation of failure, this like mindset we have is like failure is wrong, failure is bad. It's not. It's I don't even want to call it failing, because it's not really failing. It's just like understanding that if something goes awry in a scene, it's fine. Like nothing is gonna happen.
Absolutely. Right. And yeah, I don't even think failure is like binary. Failure is like, yes, no, pass, fail kind of a thing. And like, that's certainly not like how improv works, right? There are an infinite spectrum of choices that can be made in any second. And it's not like half of them are right and half of them are wrong, right? They're on the spectrum of like stronger to weaker choices, certainly, but there's no single choice you can make that determines the outcome of a scene, right? Or ruins a scene or guarantees success in a scene or whatever. And I think like often that, even that mindset is very hard for people. They're like, I see it in students where they're like, fuck, I just asked a question. Okay, never mind. I'm tapping out of the scene or whatever, right? Or like, they just denied me. No way I can make this work. I'm tuning out or whatever it is. And it's like,
Right.
no, there's nothing that, can limit the success. And I think even thinking that speaks to like, you have withdrawn internally to become the judge of your scene rather than a participant in your scene. If you're already making these kind of choices into like, what's the right move here or the wrong move, or like, I just messed up or they just messed up or something like that, you have to remove yourself from that degree of criticism within the scene. You've already lost if you're thinking like that. You have to spend all of your brain power just staying in it, as much as you can, trying to constantly make the strongest choice possible in the moment. That's too difficult a task on its own to also be judging externally, right? That's why you pay a teacher or a coach or somebody else to tell you they are paid to judge externally, not for you
Right.
as the participant.
That makes sense. Which actually kind of sort of leads me into this next question. Haven't asked it in a while, so I'm excited to get your thoughts on it. Um, so say you have two people, right, in an improv scene. You've got, maybe it's like an improv jam, and you're coaching. Let's just say you're coaching an improv jam for this question's sake. You've got someone who has like graduated from many different programs, is on multiple teams. They're coming in because they want to play with other people. So they come into this improv jam with, let's say, 10 years of experience in it. Then you have someone else who is in a scene with them who has never set foot on a stage doing improv. This is their first time doing improv, and they're in a scene together. How would you approach this as a coach? I mean, most of the time there's not coaches for jams, but the idea is the same. How would you coach these two to make them both feel like successes in that scene? If that makes any sense.
Absolutely. And I think it's like, again, two people at different points in their journey. And it's really hard not to come at it from a place of judgment of like, what you're doing and you don't, or something like that, right? Like you have to kind of remove that degree, again, that kind of binary thinking as you approach this and say like, what notes would be of most value to each of these people in this moment? For the person setting foot on stage for the first time in their life, right? Like really critiquing their space work, corncob pipe, probably not the most value you could add to them in that moment, right? Like that's the 192nd thing that they're thinking about. Hey, that's actually not how you hold a corncob pipe, right? Waste of your time as an instructor, waste of their time as an improviser. I think like, hey, pointing out something, preferably like a bigger choice or moment in the scene where they listened well, or where they might have missed something, possibly because they were in their own head or something like that, is usually the biggest thing, right? Like people, usually beginning improvisers, there's all their self-defenses are up so high. That's why there's lots of denial, not a lot of yes and or listening, right? A lot of no's, a lot of questions or high status kind of commander characters or whatever, right? And so just like giving them the permission to kind of like lower those barriers for a moment. Like, hey, did you notice that moment when they said this? And how fun that would have been to do that? I feel like that in this hypothetical scenario, that might be a good direction to point that person. Just like giving them a peek over their own mental barriers is usually really helpful for beginning improvisers, right? Like, hey, in that moment you said no, or you told the person to stop doing the thing they were doing, or you refused to go on the road trip with them or whatever, right? Can you see how it might have been really fun to go on that road trip with them, or to let them keep mopping the floor, or to say yes to them, asking you to marry them or whatever. And then usually for the advanced improviser, I think it's incredibly helpful. It's always a great reminder for me, even as a performer, that like, again, you have no time and mental space to spend judging your scene partner, right? And
Hmm.
they're and like quantifying their ability or whatever. You can't be like, okay, well, this is their first time on stage, or they're a weirdo, or they're, got Looney Tunes energy or whatever, right? You have no time for that. Your only task is trying to make the best out of whatever they're giving you, no matter how nuts or amateurish or uninformed that might be. If they come out and they're only telling you no with every line, or asking you nothing
Yeah.
but questions, or telling you're a stupid dum dum who should stop mopping the floor, great. You have to spend all your mental energy trying to make that work. And that's an
Mm.
incredibly that's a great learning experience for any improviser. It's a wonderful exercise in like how you can make fun from anything,
Yeah.
I think that even like, again, coming back to Zip Zap Zop, which I promised I would make this entire thing about, Spencer, and I'm
Uh,
delivering on that promise,
you're trying to
right?
convince me.
Like I always say, because often, even once people kind of get a hold of the Zip Zap Zop and they kind of get it and they're like, okay, it's mirroring and it's kind of fun. Yeah, when I repeat the hiccup of the person before me, and now we all keep doing hiccups. Inevitably, after a couple minutes, somebody raises their hand and they're like, so it never changes, right? We just get locked in the same hiccup zip pattern forever. And my response to that is almost always some variation of, there are 10,000 points of light or whatever on every zip. There
Mm.
are an innumerable number of things you can be picking up on. You're only able to pick up on a couple, right? Like, was there a little tilt of the head? Did their foot move forward a little bit? Did their voice go up a little bit at the end, right? Like, were they smiling or frowning or what? They're right. The human brain can't even take in all the things that are happening in any given moment. So like, there are constantly more things for you to pick up on. And so as the advanced improviser, again, even if your scene partners are refusing to talk to you, or they're just like frozen in giggles or whatever, right? There are more and more and more things that you can continue to pick up on: body language, nonverbal communication, right? Facial expression, turns of phrase, whatever, right? Like, and you becoming obsessed with those things and finding ways to make those better will, again, get you out of your head, get you out of a judgmental space of like, this person doesn't know what they're doing, or like, we're failing or whatever. And that's a good place to be, right? Again, your focus is outward, not inward. And again, that's a skill just like listening. We can never get good enough at that.
Mm. I love that. I have a this or that for you that I want to ask. Um, would you rather coach an amazing improviser or a supportive improviser?
Aren't they the same thing? How are you
Mm.
defining amazing?
Ah, yeah. So I figured this was going to happen because I was asking the question and I was like, wait, it's not clear. Let me rephrase it a little bit. Would you rather coach an amazing improviser who is is being funny and making it about them because they're amazing, or a supportive improviser who may not be the greatest improviser but is really focused on the team?
I don't have a preference, assuming all other things equal, right? Like they both have good attitudes and they both want to get better. I think that's the biggest thing. People that are interested in improving and getting better and performing better, like those people are fun to coach no matter where they're coming from or what their skills are, right?
Sure.
Um, I think, yeah, often, especially like maybe moderate to advanced improvisers kind of tend to fall into those two camps. There's the great supportive player who maybe struggles with the and part of yes and, right? They're great at the yes, but maybe it's tough for them to really like take a proactive, like they don't play big characters. They're not going to maybe make giant moves or something like that.
You're looking
Versus,
at him.
yeah, sure. Yeah, I probably fall more in that camp, right? Versus the like incredibly creative, confident, maybe type of player that plays big characters often, loves to make big show moves, right, very active, big energy, whatever. I think like often those players obviously play really well together, but I think it's
Mhm.
it's always good to point out like you grow working on the things you're not already good at,
Yep.
right? So for supportive player, you can stay supportive 85% of the time. In fact, your team probably loves you for that, and it's your skill set. But that 15% of the time, you actually have to step up and do
Mhm.
the other stuff too, right? Your team actually needs you to do that every once in a while, right? To be the aggressive character in a scene, to make that big character choice or that show move or whatever, right? Like that improves the work. And same with the aggressive, creative, maybe high status character. Like that's wonderful. And you shouldn't stop doing that, but you need to, once every 4 scenes, be the supportive move, the silent character, the background extra, the whatever, right? Like, I think that's really, really great performers and really great ensembles have like a mix of those people that, again, do your thing 90% of the time, but be prepared to do that other thing 10% of the time when it's called for. And I think that's what makes the best work and the best kind of ensemble.
I love it. It's a kind of a trick question now that I think about it, because it is this idea of, I'm always like, oh, this person is so much better than me at improv in whatever way. And then I think about it in two things. One is I'm like, oh, well, they've been doing it for like 10 years longer than I have. So I'm not at their level yet because I haven't been doing it as much. But two, that actually brings up a good point of like, my trajectory as an improviser is going to be different than the next person because my inherently natural abilities in certain things are going to be different than what the person standing next to me is in their inherent natural abilities. And then the things that I need coaching on more are like characters, um, like telling this like scenic games. I'm like the worst at scenic games, and I wouldn't say the worst. I'm better at other games. Like give me a pun game any day. Give me like a musical game. Those are like my bread and butter. But I know that other people are like, I'm not a musical game person. I'm not good at puns. And so having these different people, like you said, in the same team creates an entire package that you want for an improv team because you have all the skills that can come into play. And eventually, I do have to do a scenic game. Like, I can't just avoid every scenic game for the rest of my life. It's not going to happen. But I can pull in the things that I'm good at and put it into the scenic game and to help bridge that gap so I can become a better scenic game player or like a character choices. And so I think it's great that you actually were like, it depends, because I didn't even think about it that way. But I think the whole idea is having those two players together is what really makes it like a more well-rounded scene or team.
Absolutely. And a couple of thoughts came to mind from what you just said
Yeah,
there, Spencer. First off, I would not try to not use the phrasing of I'm not good at X. Use
yeah,
the
that's
phrasing
true.
of I'm working on X, right? I need to sharpen my scenic tools. Not that I'm not good at scenic or whatever, right? Like,
I'm
because I think
challenging myself to improve my
yes, because
yeah.
then it's constructive, right? It's like I'm currently working on it. That is a thing I'm thinking about. So it's not coming from a place of like ignoring that part of your skill set or being scared of that part of your skill set. In fact, it should encourage you to be less scared of it and more aggressive in those moments, right? Well, this is
Mm-hmm.
the thing I need to work on. The only way I'll get better at it is by working on it more,
Yep.
stepping up to the plate when those moments call for it, right? And then secondarily, I would say, just coming back to your initial question of like, who would you rather work with? And in my initial answer of like, as long as they want to get better, I think everybody is super fun to work with. There's an important thing there though. And again, this is the hard part. I think I've been lucky enough to coach a lot of improv teams and had a wonderful time. But I think the most frustrating experiences for me were when sometimes a performer or an entire ensemble is not that interested in getting better because they can do a couple things really well. And so they're just going to fall back on those things
Yeah.
constantly, right? Like I know if I hit this button, 88% of the time it works. So why would I ever do anything but hit this button? Right? Because if I go over here and hit this other button that I'm not as good at, it might be 50-50 or less, right? Like, I'd rather just hit the 88% button constantly. And I think that mentality stifles growth, obviously, because you're not interested in improving in your weaker spots or the areas where you can grow. And I think it over time degrades the morale of an improv team because like your example of like super supportive character versus maybe like super creative funny character, right? Like they probably work really well together and their scenes are probably fire. But after like 3 years, I bet super supportive guy is probably getting a little resentful that they don't get the laughs. And super creative person might be getting a little resentful that they always have to step out first in the scene and
Mm.
do most of the talking, right? And make all the choices. And I think over time, it creates schisms, and like in any romantic relationship, right? Resentment builds and kind of deteriorates. And if you're in that kind of mindset, you're not in the like, I love my teammates and I love creating with them kind of mindset. And I think that kind of rot seeps out and often leads to the end of an ensemble. So I will say, like, again, not to say that like overnight you'll become perfectly well-rounded and equally good at everything, but if you're at least committed to working on those things, your teammates, your classmates, other people you improvise with or around see that and they appreciate that. And they know, like, great, every scene I do with X player isn't them hitting the same damn button. I get you can do funny grandma. I don't want to do the 900th funny grandma scene with you, right? I want to do something else. Yeah, that's been my experience, both coaching, watching, and playing, right? And I'm sure I've been on both sides of that spectrum personally as a performer, right? Like hitting my button constantly versus resenting somebody who is only hitting their success button.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great perspective to put it in. I want to take a quick break to ask you if you have any, by quick break, I mean, we're not breaking, but
I know, are you going to
if
do
you
some
have,
ad reads right now? Are you going to talk about Blue Chew and stamps.com, or you got
no, I
sponsors on
mean,
this bad boy?
do we, if you're listening and Zach just mentioned you, if you want to sponsor us, let us know.
Yeah.
No, just if you have any plugs or pitches you wanted to throw out for you.
No, I always jokingly say don't follow me on social media because I don't post anything. It's really a waste of your time. I'll say this: if you're watching this and you've never been to the West Side Comedy Theater, I highly encourage it. For a lot of people that maybe live in Hollywood or the Valley, it can be a bit of a trek because it is Santa Monica, but it's lovely. And I know we're not too far away from them opening back up. Fingers crossed, the world looks better in a couple months. But it's a great community. It's a lovely space. Wonderful performers, teachers. It's just, people are super nice there. I think it's being close to the beach chills people out, makes them welcoming and kind. Not that there are welcoming, kind people in Hollywood too, but yeah. So I would that's my plug. If you maybe coming out of the pandemic, you're looking to get back involved in live comedy, you maybe want to do shows or take classes or just hang out amongst nerdy comedy geeks, get yourself over to the Santa Monica Promenade and go visit the West Side Comedy Theater.
Great. What a plug. What a plug. I've seen some stuff there. Can vouch. It's fun. It's exciting. Good people. I'll put the link. You can check it out in the comments section. Not the comments, the description. So you know what it is. It's YouTube.
Yes.
You'll find it. You'll find it. Click the link. That's all I'll say. So yeah. So thanks for joining me, Zach. I know that we've been asking a lot of questions, but I have one final question for you. And it's the reason that I did this improv summit. One of the main reasons is before pandemic, but even now, with improv being so widely accessible from pretty much anywhere, since people can kind of log in from all over the world to take classes with people anywhere, people always said, Spencer, you do a lot of improv. Where should I take improv? And it's hard for me to answer that question because I feel like there's more than just one answer to that. Like there's not the answer that's the be all end all answer to this question. But if someone came up to you and asked you this question, what's like one piece of advice or one exciting improv tidbit that you'd give them to help them start their improv journey?
I would say, and again, unfortunately, I can speak mostly to my experience and
Sure.
maybe a few other people close to me and their experience. I would say start wherever you feel like you can become invested in the community, whatever that means to you. That might mean you start at the place that's right down the street from you because it's very easy for you to go a lot. Could be the place that, like, when you walk in the doors, you feel at home. Could be the place where you already know a couple people. You have some friends that are already a part of the community. Because I think improv, as much or more than most performing arts, benefits from community, right? Feeling comfortable, feeling a part of something, right? That opens you up, that kind of lowers some of those defense mechanisms that make improv difficult. And so, like, whatever place makes you feel most at home and cool and relaxed and like yourself, that's where you should start. And so probably that means you need to go to a couple places and hang out and ask around and go see some shows and maybe do some drop-in classes or something like that. And then when a place clicks for you, that's it. Put your time there. And then eventually further down the road, try every place and take a million classes and get really into clowning or whatever the hell is going to be your passion. But yeah, that would be my advice. That was my experience. And I think that's why I got so much out of it is because I just went to the place where like I first felt at home.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great advice. Especially now with online, you can watch shows from a bunch of different places all over and see what styles you kind of are like. If you like short form, long form, genre, narrative, like whatever it is, musical, two-prov, whatever it is, you can have a lot of access. There's stuff on YouTube. There's this show, obviously. There's stuff on Facebook, and all the different schools everywhere have like archive shows that you can watch, or they have live shows on Zoom, and you can watch those. And so I think that's great, is to like really immerse yourself into improv to kind of see what feels like it's naturally progressing towards. Great. Well, I did say that was the last question I had for you, but as always, here on the Improv Summit, I'm a liar. So I have one more question for you. And that question is, we've been talking a lot about improv. You want to do some improv?
Sure.
Let's do it.
Where are we meeting? What studio are we going to meet in to do this improv?
Let's meet in the loft.
Oh, okay, great. The IO loft?
Yeah, the IO loft.
Okay, I think there's
I think
mostly
it's unoccupied.
yeah, we'll
There's
have an
nothing going on
audience of
right now.
mostly pigeons and squirrels probably at this point, but okay,
Great.
great.
I love
I'll
it.
meet you right there.
It's a great. Yeah. All right. See you there.
Here, how about I throw something out?
Yeah. Okay. Great.
How
Do it.
about you and I are fighting, okay? And we do not like each other at all. Yeah, that's it. How about we're two people who don't like each other who are in a disagreement?
Great.
This is one of my favorite things to do in a rehearsal or a class, because this is something that like I think often improvisers are taught to avoid, but I like steering into it and figuring out how to make it fun instead of being scared of it.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, great. And then do you want to do like a location or a suggestion beyond that?
Yeah. Let's do. You know what? Let's just see where it goes. I think.
Okay, great.
I don't want to give it something.
Okay.
I feel like we should just say it. Like we
Yeah,
should
yeah, we
get the
fucked up.
elephant in the room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we fucked up.
Yeah.
We fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, you fucked up more than I did, but I mean, yeah. You get
Fair enough. Fair enough. I am the one that failed to leave in time. Thus the police got there and we're arrested now. That is correct. Okay. That is correct. You were distracting me, okay, with your stupid bits.
I mean, yeah, they're not great. I mean, they could be better. You're right. They could be so much better. They're not as good as yours, but
Uh,
I thought, I'd lighten the mood.
Yeah, lighten the mood during our bank robbery. Yeah, that's exactly what it called for. Okay. I don't know that I have great bits. You say I have better bits than you. Okay, I'll agree on that. But you know what? I know there's a time and a place for bits. In the middle of a bank robbery is not a good time for bits.
I mean, I wish you weren't right, but see where it got us.
See
I
where
guess
it
that's
got
bad
us.
timing on my part.
Yeah, terrible timing on your part. Here we are in jail. Okay, and I'm soft. Okay, they're going to eat me alive in here. I'm a small man, okay, who's not good at defending himself. Okay, so I'm screwed, literally and
Honestly,
figuratively.
I'd probably eat you too. I mean, you're definitely weak. You're weak.
I'm incredibly weak. Okay, that's why I couldn't even hold a gun during the robbery. I just had to hold up the paper sign that said "Put the money in the bag." Okay, I'm not going to do good in here.
You couldn't even talk to people. You couldn't even ask people to put the money. You had to like hold it up and expect them to read it while I was busy actually doing all the work.
That's right. That's right. And you were so busy holding the guns, yelling at people, and yet you found time to do some bits, to work on your type 5.
I was just trying to lighten the mood for everyone involved.
Okay, the mood is not going to get lightened. Okay, we're robbing these people. We're wearing ski masks and pointing guns at them. Okay, I think they probably prefer it just end quicker rather than like it be like a joyous jaunt through bank robbery.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna stand out, you may as well make it different than all the other bank robberies, right?
Yeah. Oh boy, did we stand out?
Yeah,
Did
we
we
stood out.
stand out?
That's for sure.
They're
I
already
think it kind
calling
of
us.
backfired.
Yeah. Oh, I'll say it backfired. They're already calling us the chuckle butts in the news media.
Wow, they couldn't even call us the chuckle carcasses. Like they had to just they couldn't even say the same letter. They couldn't use any consonant. They had to call us the chuckle butts.
Yeah. Well, oh, maybe you can go workshop better headlines with them, funny guy.
Yeah,
Because
I was gonna say
you go do that while
chuckle
I'm busy
duds.
getting my head smashed over here in the corner. Some of these other crazy inmates.
Well, man up.
Man up. You're gonna tell me to man up? Like I haven't been trying hard my whole life to man up and failing.
Okay, I mean, it's not a pissing contest. I was just
No.
pointing it out.
And it's gonna be real hard to piss here, by the way, because there's just one toilet in the middle of the room. Okay. There's like 4 other guys in here, and I get stage fright. So can't wait for that.
Well, maybe that helped out that I was kind of the one that instigated everything because they gave me my own room.
Yeah. Nice.
I
To
got
be
my own
fair,
cell.
we're just talking through bars right now. So everybody can also see your toilet. Okay.
Well, it's my toilet, not a shared commune.
Yeah. Yeah. Lucky you. I can't wait for your type 5 about this experience, right? All your great bits you're going to do about jail toilets and delousing and bail.
You're just jealous.
I am incredibly jealous. Okay. You get a room to yourself. You're taller than 5'2". Okay. You're not scared for your life right now. I would love to be living your life.
I mean, at least you have roommates. I mean, I'd love to have someone to like hang out with. I'm just stuck here all by myself. I mean, even though we can talk through the bars, I have no one that I can hang out with, uh, touch, physically or mentally.
Ugh. I know physical touch is your love language. Okay. You have that whole 6-minute routine about that. Okay. No need to
Yeah,
remind me.
I had to do it during the bank robbery so I could make sure that I was self-care. Self-care is important no matter what you're doing.
Oh, don't. I know that's the setup to your first bit. Okay. Please do not continue. I've heard this routine too many times.
Well, then I'll write you out of it.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm tired of this Sklar Brothers-esque routine where you have, this elaborate setup, you make me respond, then you hit the punchline. I don't want to be a part of it. Okay. I don't want to rob banks with you anymore. I don't want to be a subordinate in your stand-up routine. Okay. I don't want to see your face anymore.
Then turn away.
Done. Okay, there's a really big guy behind me. I don't want to face him either.
And scene. Great.
Yay. We got to Bank Vault, kind of. That
Yeah,
was
that's
from the
actually
previous scene, wasn't it?
yeah. I was gonna say I didn't want to give a suggestion because I wanted to see where it led. So that was interesting. Actually, what I also think was interesting about this, I just want to point out, is even though the characters were having an argument, it wasn't no, 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 no. We kept yes anding the no, if that makes any sense. Like I think that's actually great because people want to avoid argument scenes because they think it's just always going to be like combative and like you're never going to get anywhere. But this was great of like gifting things of it's like like oh your bits are better than mine. They are, but I'm still mad at you for this thing that you did. You're right, I did that. And so it was like this yes anding of this argument, which I think was fun, and I think that may have been one of the things you were trying to get across with the argument.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like patting your head while rubbing your belly or whatever, right? Like to be angry and combative with the character while trying to be agreeable with the improviser, right? Which is maybe doesn't come naturally to us because usually when we're fighting with people in real life, we don't agree to anything they say, right? We're
Hmm.
not accepting what they say as true about us. But like when you can't do that in improv, it makes argument scenes super fun, I think, right? We don't have to be scared of them. But
Yeah, that's great.
and we can go to, and I mean, the real lesson of this experience is just always do prison scenes. I feel like jail is funny. Our criminal justice system is a deep well of laughs,
It's a
and
big joke.
every jail scene works.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, well, thanks so much for joining me again. Again, as always, this is the Improv Summit. I'm Spencer. That's Zach. Somewhere on the screen, I don't know which way it's going. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.